Hello there, dear friends. Whatculture's Adam Clery here. Once again, no, I am not in Whatculture Towers because of all of that going on outside, so I am beaming in from my palatial mansion high in the sky above the People's Democratic Republic of Newcastle upon Tyne, England, sun-drenched as it is today, and we are here to talk about the season finale of Picard. Yes, that is right, 10 whole episodes, and it all culminated last night or this morning, depending on where you are in the world, with Et In Arcadia Ego Part 2. I think it was called, the culmination of this entire overarching galaxy-spanning narrative we've been treated to thus far. Now, before I start, we are going to do a season ups and downs of Picard at some point, so I'm going to try and not get too drawn into massive overarching points and try and focus on the episode itself. But of course, the Venn diagram of things that were good and bad about the season and things that were good and bad about this episode is very nearly a circle, so we'll see how we get on. But we do have an awful lot to talk about, and I've just downloaded Animal Crossing, by the way, and I want to get back to that as soon as I can. So without further ado, my name is Adam Clery, and for one last time this season, these are all the ups and downs for this week's episode of Star Trek Picard. Now, before we start, boy, it's almost as if somebody who was very intelligent and very handsome and had a dashing space jacket had been saying for this entire season that he was worried they were really stretching out the first 5 or 6 episodes with not a whole lot happening, and then might end up having to cram loads of it in to the last few episodes, because again, boy, did this feel rushed. Now, you can relax. I'm not the kind of film studies nerd who's going to make a big song and dance about pacing and stuff like that, so it's not going to get an up or a down. It's just nice to know that I was right, because while this episode had some good points and had some bad points, all of them whizzed past like this. It's actually quite a difficult episode to apply the ups and downs formula to this, because normally what I like to do is go through each little individual beat of the episode and say, hey, that was good and that was good, but it really sucked. But this is kind of like broad, overarching stories getting wrapped up, so we're kind of going to have to be a bit more like general in our terms, but don't worry, I'll still make it entertaining. And our first down is actually my biggest down of the entire season. They've just got now a magical contrivance stick. Now here's the thing, right? Every single problem in Star Trek is solved with a wave of the hand, but that's like a metaphorical wave of the hand. Every single crisis, catastrophe, whatever, gets solved by somebody, to borrow a phrase from that Matt Damon film where he's on Mars, can't remember what it's called, sciencing the out of the situation. They say nonsensical technobabble to us, the viewer, and we sit there and go, I don't get what that is, but it sounds like it makes sense. Now, one of my favourite Star Trek scenes is in Star Trek Generations, right, where the Klingon bird of prey is attacking the Enterprise D, and Riker goes, Mr. Worf, what do we know about that old Klingon ship? And he goes, oh, it's a type whatever bird of prey. They were retired from service because of defective plasma coils. And he goes to Data and says, Data, anything we can do with defective plasma coils? Would they be susceptible to some kind of low-level ionic pulse? And Data goes, excellent idea, sir. If we send a low-level ionic pulse, we could activate the blah, 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 and trigger their cloaking device. Right, get on it. And he's scrambling around the thing, and they trigger the cloaking device, and then he goes, fire, and then they blow it up, and I'm like, ah, yes, good science, boys. Whereas in this episode, they go, well, what you kind of got to do, yeah, is just imagine that it's fixed. That is some of the laziest writing, something that betrays the entire ethos of how Star Trek episodes are put together. I hated it, it's a down. Don't get me wrong, I get that it might seem like a very clever joke on behalf of the writers, like we have to hand wave away these problems, so let's give them a hand waving tool that will solve these problems. But no, don't ever do that again, I'll kill you. But one thing I will give the writers credit for is not falling into the trap of the worst television trope of the modern era, and that is ending on some pointless, shoehorned in cliffhanger. Thank you for not doing that. And while we're on the subject of the writing team, if you've been on the internet at all over the last 10 weeks, then you've probably seen things like Q, Law, Geordi, Worf, the Enterprise, Starfleet being the real baddies, Vija, the origin of the Borg, Seven being their new queen, Picard ascending to some higher life form. You name it, you've seen some kind of proposed twist that they were going to do to make this a seminal part of Star Trek history. And in the end, they did none of them. Like in this entire 54-minute episode, there wasn't one single like jaw-dropping moment, which I think we were all expecting to get, weren't we? Like, yeah, we know that the Romulans were behind the synth attack on Mars and it was all a giant conspiracy, but Raffi told us about that in episode 3. Then the alien super predator species that was gonna, like, they're gonna kill everything, but we knew that in episode 8. So, like, this all just kind of took a backseat to Picard having a headache. Now, yes, I know it's far more complicated than that, and yes, I know that doing a twist purely for the sake of doing a twist would be even worse, but you've got to remember, right? This is a show that has had mysterious prophecies and has had these shadowy conspiracies and stuff, and has wanted you to think all the way through that things are not always as they appear to be. And then in the season finale, everything just was as it appeared to be. That's inconsistent and a down. But you know what, since I've been bashing the writers a bit, I will give them credit for one thing, and it's quite an important thing. They did not fall into the trap of the worst TV trope of the modern era, and that is ending on some contrived cliffhanger. The reason I loved Watchmen so much was because it was this one self-contained story. Now, yes, I know she does dip her toe in at the end. It's like, oh, she got the powers, has she not? And that is technically a cliffhanger, but it's not really related to the overall story. They wrapped all of that up in one nice little package, and that just doesn't happen anymore. So the decision here to wrap up everything for this season was a welcome, refreshing change. I'm giving that a solid up. Like all the stuff about Picard, that has now been closed. All the good guys got their closure, all the bad guys got their comeuppance, and the only thing we do end on is this newly assembled crew of the La Sienna warping out into deep space to presumably right some other wrong in the galaxy somewhere. And that got me thinking. Now, the big reason why I think not that many people seem to really like this season of Picard was because it wasn't Star Trek like Mama used to make them, was it? It wasn't this story about this intrepid gang and all their problems, and sometimes their problems are universe ending, and sometimes their problems are entirely trivial, but week by week you get to know them all a little bit better, and it's kind of more about their lives than it is any big, grand, overarching storyline. But you couldn't do that in the first season, because why do I care about any of these people? I don't. They're brand new to me. But just that shot at the end, where they're all wearing the same nice jackets with the same nice little badge on, and they're on the same nice little ship, and you've just got Agnes, and you've got Soji, and you've got Rios, you've got Raffi, you've got Elnor, you're probably going to add Narek to it, and you've got Seven of Nine, and of course Picard. You've got a proper Star Trek crew there, and season 2 could just be classic Star Trek, where they go around the galaxy solving little problems and having their own little mini issues, and I would watch the hell out of that. But only because they've done such good groundwork getting us here. And the decision to give each and every one of these characters a bit of closure in this final episode, I think was a really nice idea. All the little scenes of these guys, from Rio sitting on the wall drinking his bottle with Seven, to then Seven getting incredibly familiar with Raffi at the end, and Elnor sort of just basically deciding that it's exhausting, this whole lost cause patter. They did a really good job with it. It's also getting enough. But for all the good work they did with the good guys, they also did some incredibly bad work with the bad guys. So just a quick recap for you. Here are 3 primary antagonists. They are Commodore O, the secretive, shadowy Romulan double agent who's been pulling the strings behind the scenes at Starfleet for years now and is responsible for the attack on Mars, the catastrophic loss of life, and indeed the entire synth ban narrative that runs all the way through this show. But then of course there is her deadly right-hand woman, the assassin Narissa, who kills without remorse and is going to kill our intrepid crew. She's already killed Hugh, and that was really terrible. But then we are introduced at the end, of course, to Sutra, the android, who is a lesser version of Daj and Soji, but nonetheless more deadly. She's going to single-handedly bring about this alien super predator race who are going to wipe out all organic life in the galaxy, because all 3 of them are immensely evil. Commodore O there, the political mastermind, she has some treaty law quoted at her before making her merry way back to Romulus. And the lethal Narissa, she has an incredibly short fist fight and then an incredibly long drop. And then the unconquerable, the evil android Sutra, she comes face to face with the off button on her own remote. Down. All that good work, building up all these. See, this is what happens when you rush your season finale. You end up defeating your foes just because. Now that is a huge gripe I've got with this episode, but I'm now going to indulge a petty gripe because I've been trapped in this flat for 15 days now, and I'll do whatever the hell I like. I was gonna let this go at first when Raffi said, "And don't think we won't explode, you dirtbag ass," or whatever it was she said to Narek. I was like, "Oh, that's bad writing." And then when Commodore O said, "Prepare planetary eradication thingy number 5," I was like, "Oh, that's bad writing." But then Riker appeared. Right now I'm on the bridge of the toughest, fastest, most powerful ship Starfleet's ever put into service, and I've got a fleet of them at my back. We've got our phasers locked on your warp cores, and nothing would make me happier than giving me an excuse to kick your treacherous Tal Shiar ass. Absolutely nobody in this galaxy or another talks like that. See, if there is one thing Star Trek has always done so reliably and consistently well, right, it's giving a wide berth to those lame Hollywood action cliches. And that is one of the worst examples I can think of Star Trek doing something like that ever. Like, that genuinely sounds like something from like a fan convention or like a charity telethon where Jonathan Frakes he's getting involved and they've got this little Star Trek setup and he's going to blow away something, but oh, wouldn't you just know it, a lovable idiot from another television show has been comically miscast as the weapons officer. Like, can you tell me you can't imagine him saying those lines and then going, Mr. Simpson, fire at will, before wheeling around in his chair to see that Homer is asleep behind the console? You could, couldn't you? It's a down. And one final point while we're on these lame-ass Hollywood action tropes. 218 Romulan warbirds, and they are met by almost as many Federation starships. Has there ever been a sci-fi set piece of such scale which felt so pointless? Like, for a start, if you can only be bothered to design 2 or 3 different classes of ship, then don't use 400 in the same shot, because it just looks really interchangeable and pointless, and why do I care about any of these ships? I have no idea what any of them are or what's going on in them. And also, while we're in this just absolutely horrible scene, Commodore O has, and I counted, 4 chances to just obliterate the planet, but just keep stalling for dramatic tension because they had no idea how to drag this scene out. She tells them to target the Abomination's nest and then doesn't actually fire on it. Then she tells them to lock weapons on the settlement and then still doesn't actually fire on it. Then she tells them to resume sterilization pattern despite the fact they didn't actually start doing it. Then she tells them to prepare to fight. And then over a minute passes where nobody fights. They just kind of float there. Not unlike the end of that most recent Star Wars film where just every ship in the galaxy came for the big fight and you didn't care about a single one of them. This just was so, like, I imagine when you come up with a scene you think, oh, that's going to be eye-catching and interesting, but absolutely nothing eye-catching or interesting happened. The bit with the flowers was excellent. The bit with the 400 superfluous starships, when it's literally just O and Riker with Picard in the middle, was so dumb. And I really, look, this is the thing, right? It was probably fine, but when you set up something that big and it underwhelms that much, it's just a yawning chasm of disappointment, and I'm giving it a down. So bottom line here, this episode was not great, but it did at least end with, I think, one of the highlights, if not the highlight, of the entire season. Picard finally sits down with Data. Not a dream of Data, actual Data. Yes, it's a simulation, but that is Data's consciousness, and they have one of the most emotive, fitting and touching exchanges I have ever seen in Star Trek. I love this last scene. And the thing is, this entire story has been about Data, like Picard haunted in his dreams by him, his regret over how things ended, and the legacy the guy left on society purely because of who he was. And yet we had such little actual use of him. He was in those dream sequences at the start. Yes, he opened the show with that lovely scene on the Enterprise D, and yet Brent Spiner, he did come and he did do another soon character, but Data's not really been in it. And then he finally was, and I'm going to completely overlook the slightly bad hair and makeup effects and whatnot and just get to the heart of the matter here. Data's story about the android who had it all but would give it all up to be human. He literally gives it all up because he realizes what it is to be human, and that is the beauty of life, of love, of friendship, of everything. It's only so powerful because of mortality, because it is fleeting and you have to cherish it while it's here. And all his attempts to learn how to laugh or grow a beard or develop these human traits, they missed the true essence of what it is to be human. And this is him finally realizing it. It's been worth everything in this season, the good and the bad, for this last exchange. I think it was one little tear. And with blue skies playing in the background, bringing us full circle from that opening scene of Picard and Data, we pretty much end the season there. They wrap up some of the bits and bobs, but that's kind of where it all finishes. And just on that quote, we are such stuff as dreams are made on, and we round our little life with a sleep. It's just, what a show this has been, man. I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, it's not been perfect. We will get into the whole season, the ups and the downs of that in a later video, I think. But in the here and now, whoop, that's it for season 1 of Star Trek Picard. I do not think that was perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I can also think of much worse ways I could have spent the time watching those 10 episodes. It didn't do everything right, it didn't do everything well, but the stuff it did do, I absolutely loved. absolutely loved. But as ever, let us know what you made of it all in the comments below. Of course, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I am still locked in here for the foreseeable, so there's going to be plenty more Star Trek content where that came from. If we've done a premiere, I think we were going to do it. Thank you so much for joining us for it. Let me know what you made of the season on Twitter at Adam Clery. My thanks as ever to Chris Thompson, who's done a fantastic job editing these. I'm really sad we lost the green screen because I can't keep replicating in my cups of coffee, but regardless, thank you all so much for watching. I have dearly loved writing all these articles and presenting all these videos. Hopefully many more to come with season 2, but until then, thank you so much for watching. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're staying safe, I hope you are well, I hope you are not going outside, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.